Charlie Loudermilk and Andy Young started out as unlikely political allies.
They pushed me to run for mayor. I didn't want to run as in a black against white contest. So I said I need one strong, well-respected white businessman to be with me in case I win.
His choice, Charlie Loudermilk.
And I said, well, you know, Andy, if you're sincere in that, I'll support you.
Through the years, their teamwork not only forged a friendship, but also helped unite a city. Now they've paired up for another purpose, to support the Atlanta Press Club's Loudermilk Young debate series.
It's our responsibility, ours meaning the voters, to put the people in offices that will be honest and be the best.
And being the best is what matters the most for these two men.
People ask me, how does a white conservative Republican have a close relationship with a black liberal Democrat? And I just said, that's just the way we do it in Atlanta.
GPB, winner of 11 Emmy Awards, including Station Excellence. Thank you for your support.
The 2012 Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, brought to you from Georgia Public Broadcasting. The Republican race for Public Service Commission District 5.
Good afternoon. I'm Deidre Dukes, news reporter and weekend anchor for WAGA TV Fox 5 Atlanta. We would like to welcome our viewers and our live studio audience to the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series, originating from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This is the debate between the Republican candidates running for Georgia's Public Service Commission in District 5. The Public Service Commission oversees telecommunications, electric, and gas services in the state. The 5th District of the Public Service Commission covers 23 counties west of Metro Atlanta. Some of the larger counties include Carroll, Coweta, Meriwether, and Troup counties. Although the commissioner must reside in the district, this is a statewide election. Now let's meet the candidates. They are in alphabetical order. Pam Davidson, an energy policy consultant and project facilitator, and incumbent Stan Weiss. He had eye surgery and is not able to participate in today's debate, so he will be represented by an empty podium. Weiss sent the following statement. He says, quote, "While I still cannot see out of my right eye, my vision for Georgia could not be clearer." He goes on to say, "I have been fighting to ensure Georgia has reasonable utility rates with unsurpassed reliability." His statement continues, "My expanding nuclear power and investing over $6 billion in our electric and natural gas infrastructure, my leadership has ensured Georgia can meet energy demand for decades to come." End quote. For more information from the Weiss campaign, the website is stanweiss.com. Here is the format for tonight's debate. In the first round, Pam Davidson will answer a question from one of our 3 panelists. In the second round, she will ask a question of her absent opponent. And in the third round, the panelist will continue questioning the candidate. Finally, the candidate will have 30 seconds to make a closing statement. And before we get started, we want to meet our 3 panelists selected by the Atlanta Press Club. First, we have Bill Liss, an investigative reporter for the WXIA TV Help Desk. Next is Christy Schwartz, business reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And our final panelist is Dave Williams, staff writer for the Atlanta Business Chronicle. Now, let's get started with the debate. In the first round, the candidate will be asked a question by one of our panelists. She will have 60 seconds to answer the question, and Bill Liss will have the first question for Pam Davidson. Bill.
Thank you. Well, Ms. Davidson, you're seeking a position that requires careful analysis of fact and equal attention to detail and measured statements that are based entirely on truth. Now, how do you justify claiming important credentials such as a college degree, which voters accept as truth, when you don't appear to have one? Now, you call it a glitch, as I've seen you quoted in saying, but it does raise a definite question when you didn't appear to have one. Now, you've had more than a month to try to sort this out. You said you were going to make a call and get it straightened out. Do you have that degree is really the bottom line. And if you do, fine. If not, why? And why didn't you tell us that going in?
Well, thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to clear up this matter. The fact of the matter is I didn't attempt to deceive anybody when I said that I had a degree in the 2008 Voter's Guide. In fact, I thought I did have the degree. I completed a working program with about 40 other individuals. We all started the program and completed the program on time. I completed all the graduation requirements. In fact, I graduated. I walked in the ceremony. But I never received my degree. Now it's my understanding in communicating with the university that they feel I owe 4 units. And that's an area of dispute, but they have the bottom line there. And so, no, I don't have a degree. I am 4 units, a philosophy requirement short of having the degree. At no time did I attempt to deceive voters, and to suggest that I did is frankly dirty politics.
Thank you. And that concludes round 1. It is now time for our candidate to ask a question of her absent opponent. You have 30 seconds for the question and 30 seconds for a rebuttal. Mrs. Davidson, your question for Commissioner Wise.
Yes, Commissioner. Just 3 days before you cast the deciding vote on a $2.3 billion reimbursement, which an independent monitor claimed was imprudent for the power company, you accepted over $10,000 in campaign contributions from the power company. Please tell me how you can rationalize this, sir, taking money and essentially being bought right before a vote.
The time for the question is up, as you've ended it.
Thank you.
Do you have a rebuttal?
Mr. Wise has said that is a matter of free speech, so that the power company has a right to express themselves with their money. That is his essential rebuttal, and I'll just mention that here.
All righty. Well, that concludes our second round of questioning. For those who may be joining our program in progress, this is the debate among the candidates in the Republican primary for Georgia's Public Service Commission District 5. Incumbent Stan Wise is recovering from eye surgery, was unable to join us this afternoon. Now, for our third round, we return to our panel of journalists who will ask questions of Pam Davidson. The candidate will be allowed 60 seconds to respond, and we begin this round with a question from Christy Schwartz. Christy?
Good afternoon, ma'am. The current state laws prohibit utilities from giving directly to PSC candidates or sitting PSC members. However, executives, employees, their family members can contribute money, as well as lobbyists and lawyers that represent those companies. Do you think that the state's campaign finance laws should be further restricted?
Yes, I do. And just because something is legal doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it ethical. Certainly, 91% of my opponent's contributions comes from the utilities that he would regulate. He also accepts excessive gifts. Between 2005 and 2011, he accepted over $14,000 in gifts. While campaign donations might be rationalized because we run statewide, my gift is to represent voters and to represent ratepayers. I don't need a gift. I'm not going to take a dime from the utilities I would regulate, or a cup of coffee, or any favor like getting a job for your son from the attorneys that represent Georgia Power.
And Dave, you have the next question.
Good afternoon.
Thanks.
Third-party financing around the country has become the most popular method of financing the installation of solar panels. Yet legislation to allow such power purchasing agreements in Georgia failed in the General Assembly this year. Do you support giving Georgia property owners the ability to install solar energy systems and generate their own electricity?
Okay. Well, the bill did not get out of committee, so we really don't know what the idea was behind that. My understanding is that it was a behind-the-meter provision. In other words, it was an agreement between third parties and homeowners, and certainly they should be able to do that. If it was a front-of-the-meter provision, then we would have some questions regarding the details. The devil is in the details. And those concern transmission costs in large part. So I would want to take a look at those.
Our next question comes from Bill.
I'm going to ask you, if I can, about nuclear power. Now, I'd love to know how you feel about Georgia Power customers having to pay the financing charges, which they have to do right now for Georgia's nuclear power building, then later having to pay the construction costs along the way. And also then possibly, aren't those considered really to be just costs of doing business, like buying a car but paying General Motors to build a plant to be able to use the car. And plus, in this particular case, people who might move out of the state before they'll see any kind of a rate reduction, but they are having to pay right now. And also adding fuel to the fire is the $400 million overrun that customers may also have to pay for. How do you feel about all that?
Well, that's a lot. First of all, I am pro-nuclear. I think nuclear power is a wonderful thing that's happened. It's a low-cost source of power, and it's also low in carbon emissions. Having said that, Senate Bill 31, it was a mistake. Essentially, and the Commission's approval of this prepay was a mistake. You stated the principle that I frankly object to. If you're not going to get 1 kilowatt of energy, and some ratepayers will not by the time these plants are built, then you shouldn't have to pay for it. That's certainly something that is patently unfair. My concern with the nuclear plants is that several members of the Commission have received money, and so they're bought. To use a term that I wouldn't like to, but it's true. And so with regard to future expenditures on these plants, they can't offer an unbiased point of view. The nuclear renaissance in this country really depends on the successful administration of those nuclear plants.
And we'll have to leave it there. Time for that question. Moving on, you have the next question, Christy.
Okay. Ma'am, regarding Plant Vogtle, the commissioners had considered what was called a risk-sharing mechanism, so that if the project came in at a certain amount under budget, then Georgia Power's profits would have gotten a boost, and if it came in over budget, then they would be shaved. And clearly this was voted down. Now, Georgia Power has said, eventually long-term, they'd like to continue to build nuclear, but it's clear that this won't be the last power plant that they're going to have to build in the state. So nuclear or any other type of baseload, would you consider implementing a risk-sharing mechanism to kind of keep costs under control?
Absolutely. I think that was a very prudent recommendation that the staff recommended, and I'm curious as to why it didn't pass. Certainly, I own a business. If I go out and produce something, if it's not a success, or indeed if it's a failure, I don't expect to be compensated for that. That's very free market. So why should the power company be compensated when they don't perform? I think they should be compensated based on their performance.
And Dave, you have the next question.
The PSC recently approved a plan by Georgia Power reducing its reliance on coal-burning power plants and moving more toward natural gas. Now, some in the environmental community have complained that the plan is good in one way but doesn't go far enough, for example, in retiring more of the old coal-burning plants. What's your position on that?
Well, coal has been king in this state, and it's kept our energy prices low, and we're quite frankly in trouble because the federal government, the EPA, has cracked down on coal. And it's always a weighing, do we add the accoutrements to address emissions, or do we just get rid of the plant? It is a hard decision to make. Frankly, there are a lot of jobs involved in those coal plants, and I would be reticent to shut them down before schedule. At the same time, we need to add more balance to our energy mix. And so that's my position on coal and on the decommissioning of those plants. Thank you.
And the next question from Ms. Davidson from Bill.
Well, what are the specific substantive positive changes? You had mentioned that in some of your campaign material that were made in the state's energy policy, that were made because of your lobbying and other efforts perhaps in biomass energy or other areas. You mentioned some very positive changes in policy. What are they?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to state that I'm not a lobbyist. I'm an energy consultant. I have registered to lobby on occasion if I have to go down and talk with a legislator, and I need to obey state law. One of the bills that I worked on was House Bill 670, and it was a tax credit bill, and it added for the first time energy efficiency, solar, biomass. It was sort of an all-encompassing bill, and I thought that was important. I know you're probably aware that Georgia receives less than 1% of its energy from renewable sources. So that is not in spirit with keeping a balanced energy portfolio in this state. And frankly, it leaves us woefully unprepared for any federal mandate that might come down. I'm not in favor of mandates, but I would certainly have to comply with them, and that's a concern for me.
And our final question for this round from Christy.
Okay. The nation continues to lack a long-term energy policy for storing or any sort of handling of nuclear waste. So how would you shape that policy? Would it include reprocessing, and would it include keeping the spent fuel rods on site or transporting them elsewhere?
Okay. That's certainly a consideration. We're building 2 new nuclear reactors. I have heard some comments that they feel that the buildings housing those, housing the nuclear waste are not sufficient. I certainly plan to look into that. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the federal government has a responsibility. Georgia ratepayers invested a great deal of money in order to have that waste dealt with, and it hasn't been done. So I certainly would encourage the federal government to step up to the plate in that regard. As far as reprocessing, I'm told that the type of waste produced from our plants aren't, the waste is not readily and economically viably reprocessed. I'll have to look into that quite a bit, but that's my position on nuclear waste.
Thank you. And that does conclude our second round. No more time for questions. Now, each of the Republican candidates in the primary for Georgia's Public Service Commission District 5 will now have 30 seconds for a closing statement. As a reminder, the incumbent, Stan Weiss, declined our invitation for this debate. Therefore, our only closing statement will come from Pam Davidson. Ms. Davidson.
Thank you. My name is Pam Davidson. I would like to ask for your vote, voters. I am a Christian, I am a Christian wife and mother. I work hard in my church. I'm a business person. I am a conservative, both a moral and fiscal conservative, and I would pursue a conservative energy policy for the state. I ask for your vote, and my website is PamDavidson4, and that's spelled out FORPSC.org. I thank you.
And thank you, Ms. Davidson. And that concludes our debate. We would like to remind voters that the primary elections will be held on Tuesday, July 31st. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. For more information about the Atlanta Press Club, you may visit atlantapressclub.org. The debates that air on Georgia Public Broadcasting will be archived on the Press Club's website. The broadcast has been streamed and will be available on demand on GPB's website, gpb.org. I'm Deidre Dukes. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series. Stay with GPB for more debates coming up next.
Become a better voter. Debates continue next with the Republican race for the 10th Congressional District on GPB.
This is a GPB original production.